Hi and welcome to Code Labs Academy third Women in Tech event. My name is Yagoda and I am the marketing associate at Code Labs. In this series, we're giving a platform to four women to talk about their experiences and their projects. And hopefully with these events, we can contribute to one of you seizing their dream job or entering the tech industry. Um, Today's guest is Laura, and she's going to tell us about herself, her path in tech, her projects. But before we start with the presentation, I have two organizational points. The first thing is that if you have any questions throughout the session, please just post them in the chat, and so that you remember them, and we will answer them all at the end of the presentation. The other thing I'd like you to know is that this session is recorded, so that we can post it on our YouTube channel afterwards in case anybody missed it. And yeah, that's all from me, since this event is all about Laura and her story she has to tell. So hello, Laura, please take the stage.
Thank you, Yakota, and thank you so much for inviting me for this presentation. I'll try to share my screen with you firstly, and so we can start. I assume that you can see, right? Yeah. So my name is Laura Gavrila. I'm a UX UI designer. And I'll talk a little bit about the agenda. I created this specific agenda just because it's more about inspiration, how I got to work in tech, specifically in UX UI design. And I think it's important to mention these points in the agenda. So it's I'll talk about who I am, my education, my moving to Denmark, my journey here, courses and networking, example of my work, and at the end, as it was mentioned, we'll have some questions and answers sessions. So I'm a UX UI designer from Romania. I came to Denmark about 8 years ago, and the reason I added this description about me that I have a great passion for solving complex digital business challenges while having an everything is possible attitude is because this is actually what motivated me to keep working towards my goals, and especially everything is possible attitude. And that's because I think many of us, we have many goals and dreams, but we believe that is not possible. And of course, some things physically is not possible, but most of them are if we have the right mindset. And so I was educated in Romania. I had high school. I was studying since I was little. Actually, I started with painting because my background is actually graphic design and painting, or an artist, better said. And I started with high school when I was, I think, 13 years old or so. I started to study art, painting and drawing. But prior to that, I was doing all the time at home drawing and competing to all kinds of competitions, international competitions for art, where I won different competitions internationally. So that's why I continued with high school in arts. And then after arts, I applied for a bachelor in fine arts, pedagogy, also pedagogy, one of the subjects that I studied, and decorative and design arts, where I was learning to paint, learning about history of art, everything about painting, like spending maybe one day or sometimes from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the evening, just painting and drawing and learning about art. So this is my background. After that, I moved to a master in production, set design. And that was more about theater and staging in theater and movies. And it was related to art a little bit, but yeah, but also drawing a lot and having a mindset of how to prototype, for example, which is what I'm doing now in UX UI design. So it's kind of, I've learned some of the notions from arts school, but of course it was not enough. Moving to Denmark, that was an interesting experience, and that's because, as you can see here, what I was working with, even though I studied arts, was graphic design. I started with, and that's because while I was studying arts, we had one per week course in graphic design, and that's because I was really passionate into learning software, everything about software. I was learning very fast the software for doing graphic design. And then my teacher proposed me to get hired at his company, actually, because he could see that I am having passion into it. So I continued with graphic design, which for those who doesn't know what is graphic design, is more for printing, for papers, creating logos, just basically creating more on using colors a lot and art. Further, coming to Denmark, I continued to do graphic design, and that's because here in Denmark, it was really difficult to have a full-time position because I was not really speaking well at all English in Denmark. Not at all. I could understand, but it was so difficult to get a job and speak fluently, or at least making myself understandable. So I had to take side jobs. And I just studied a lot. I bought books. I was listening courses. I took courses in English as well to practice and improve my English. So for those who doesn't feel confident in anything, I think everything can be learned and of course sustained by practice. After so while doing freelancing, I kind of started to take also courses into web design, firstly because I had networking asking me, okay, do you want to make also websites for us, and not only logos and flyers and whatever other paper design. So I took this type of projects. I started with web design, then I took courses because I was like, okay, I don't understand many of the principles of web designing. So how does this work? Because I couldn't apply, of course, the same principles in art as it is in web design. So I started to take courses, and then I discovered this term UX UI design, which I kind of I really got interested into it. And that's because it was very, very much very close to my personality. I'm a quite open person. I like to talk to people. And I thought that this is very, very matching to me. And after that, as you can see, I moved to Valure. I got an internship. It was difficult to get an internship as well because many companies, they might be not that welcoming of having internships, especially if you didn't study in the same field. It might be difficult for them, but actually I was lucky with them, and we had a great team of another UX designer and design lead. And here I learned a lot about UX design and UI design. And then based on my courses, I practiced a lot UX design. I kind of did UI design for the websites, but then UX design, it was a different field, I would say. So I've learned about making prototypes, talking to customers, talking with our users, actually, doing a lot of research, field research, and also desktop research. I've learned how to prototype, how to create concepts, and understanding what the user wants, so we can have a better design. After Valure, I had with Netcompany, actually, I started a project. Someone noticed that I'm kind of interested very much and seen my projects, and it liked what I've worked with. And then I had a freelance project firstly with Netcompany. It was a very nice collaboration and challenging at the same time, because Netcompany is one of the biggest IT company in Northern Europe, as I know. So we had a very, very challenging projects. And after that, because I actually really liked how we worked together, and then coming from a startup, Valure is a startup, to close to corporation, Netcompany, a big company, it was such a different feeling and such a different experience and environment. So we were talking, okay, I'd like to actually see how it's on the other side of a startup, and could I get an internship in that company? So because of my results from the project, I got an internship in that company. And I loved it. It was such a different experience, but I've learned so much from that company. And further on, I moved to, I got a full-time position at TreeShape, which is dentist. It's working in dentistry. They are a leader on scanning on the market. I think it's world leader on the market with scanning for for the industry. That's a little bit about my experience in Denmark, and how, as I mentioned here, how I got from freelancing to valuer. I have to mention very concise things. It's courses, networking, internships, and the last one, getting a mentor. So now I'm going into more details about how I got from graphic design, changing the career towards UX UI design. For courses, I started with Accenture. I don't know if you know this platform, but at some point, I don't know if they have it now. It was a free course within UX UI design. I took it. Then I continued with Udemy. Probably all of us know about this platform. You can find a lot of courses that are not so expensive, so, like many discounts. And I think it's very insightful. Many of the courses are very insightful, and I've learned a lot about it. But what I can highlight for my career in UX UI design, it's actually the Design Interaction Foundation. They have a membership for 1 year. They have a lot of courses on design thinking, UX management, UX design, and I think this will set my career towards UX design, if I would say. So what I want to emphasize is that just working hard and taking courses and just have passion about it, because if I wouldn't have passion about UX UI design, I wouldn't go into this field. And lastly, I took a Skillsoft course, which as you can see here, I've learned CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, besides all the rest of the courses which I took before. And that's because why I decided to take this type of course, because while I was doing freelancing and also in that company, I found out that I'm missing this part of understanding CSS, HTML, or understanding how the developers work. So for me, it was really, really insightful to take these courses. And don't think I know how to code, because I don't. I don't know. I can set up a color or a square or something like that. It's not something I know to do, but I kind of understand the logic behind. And when I'm coming in my field with a solution, firstly, I have to think, okay, how could this from a development point of view could be? And it can be challenging because you can come up with a solution which doesn't have a solution for developers. They cannot develop it. They cannot create it. So it's best to have a little bit of knowledge, but it's not a must. And that's because I'm a UX UI designer. If I would be only UX designer, then this is not really, you don't need to have it, because you don't go to that part where you have to do the design for the platform or what you need to design. At least that's what my experience with my jobs so far. And another community, actually, it's this CPH UX. Now I'm giving you some names, some tips just to follow. This is very nice UX community. Before COVID, I used to go to physical events, and we've met so many people there. I created so many friends, and then networking with people, asking for advices. And as you can see, mentoring for reviewing portfolio and monthly advice. How I actually got to have mentors from these big companies, from Maersk, IBM, and advice is actually through CPH community, CPH UX community. So it's very important to engage with people, to network, to talk to people, because and if you like, just be curious. And if you really are so passionate about your field, go out there and ask questions and ask them to review your portfolio or whatever advices you need. And for me, for example, I went with my portfolio, which it was really, really, I'm not proud of it, my first portfolio in UX UI design. But having this, the advice from these people, from these companies, it just set me up so high, because suddenly I could see with with different eyes what I was doing, and I could understand better what I was doing and learn a lot about this field. Yeah, that's it about courses and networking. And just to mention, I also got a monthly mentor, which is again very important, because when you have a full-time job, you have some situations where you don't really know the answers. So it's best to have someone to guide you. That's my best advice of what you could do if you want to advance your career. And now some example of my work and a challenge. I'm mentioning net company project and internship, and that's because it was I think the most complex project in that period of time. And the challenge was that it was very complex software architecture, so I had to understand everything about the system. I didn't encounter this before, and for me it was a nice experience to see that at what level they work. Then I was also the only UX UI designer in the team, which again I didn't experience. I was, yes, alone mostly when I was doing freelancing, but it was a different way to be alone, because I was taking all the decisions. It was not that much collaboration. Yes, I would have collaborations with developers and the other like customers, but then it was not like a Scrum Master as it is in Netcompany, or a PEO or other type of people and stakeholders as well. So it was a different way of collaboration. And as a UX UI designer, the only one in the team at that point, you have to take decisions by yourself, and you have to know in a way what decisions to take. At least it's what I felt when I was doing the internship. And then it's also working in a very agile team. That was my challenge, because as I mentioned, being a different team structure, I had to learn how to collaborate with them with deadlines, with their way of working, with a Scrum Master, for example. So I had to learn all of this. Yeah, and then this is a little bit of the project I had in Netcompany. I was doing journey maps, system mapping, data analyzing, mockups, meeting customers and understanding their needs. We had requirements, a lot of research. So I had to understand a lot about this project. We had journey maps, as I mentioned. It was a complex solution, so I had to collaborate very well with my team. I had to ask questions. I had to understand what knowledge the other team members have, so I can add it together. That's why I'm saying here that being a UX UI designer, the only one in the team, might be difficult, because you don't have all the information, and you have to collaborate with people who are not from the design field. And this might be difficult because they have a very business mindset, where everything needs to be fast and correct. But when you are a UX designer, you also are challenged to come up with a solution and think in an iterative way. And sometimes you don't have the solution right now, so you have to learn to say no, which I didn't know when I was doing the internship, but I learned with more experience. But so to say no, but also to have the solution for them to deliver. And of course, not many companies understand what is UX design. That means that we care about the user's needs, and then we test with the users after understanding what are their needs with doing the research. And for these business people, sometimes they cannot understand that we need the time to test with the users to make sure that we have the right decision for the users. So that was the difficult part in this as well. Of course, I was not that experienced at that point with stakeholders and team members, but I think we did a good job. So it was really interesting to be in the team. And some of the learnings, it's asking for help. It's what I struggled when I was doing the internships and the other projects, coming with a mindset from freelancing. It was really difficult for me to ask for help, because in freelancing, you already know to do that specific project, because you got an approval from the customers, and you do what you describe them that you'll do. But it's in working in teams, it's very important to ask for help and admit when you don't know, when you are challenged. when you need more people to help you to collaborate, as for example, research is, especially in research situations, maybe you don't have the researcher skills, because this is also another different type of skills that a UX designer doesn't necessarily need to have to that level. So it's good to ask for help from your colleagues. You don't need to be perfect, which I also discovered during my internships. The tendency is to prove that you are good, but I think we have to learn firstly, and nobody asked you for perfection. In that company, it was everything so nice and so acceptable. So if you do a mistake, then it was totally fine. I'm talking about this because I'm coming from a culture in Romania where we've learned that we have to, in order to have high grades, for example, we have to be perfect. Everything we need to, in our work, we need to be perfect, because other we get blamed, or who knows what happens, or people don't respond in a nice way when you're not perfect. So coming with this mindset in Denmark, actually here, besides internship, I also just, it's different culture. I've learned that I don't need to be perfect. I need to do my best in the time that I have. So that's the goal. And then what I've learned again is also that agile means agile, which is related with you don't need to be perfect. We have deadlines on different projects. We need to deliver to those deadlines, and that's what means agile, being agile. So you don't need to come up with the perfect solution. You have a deadline, you present to the team, and that's about. And I think I'm a little bit fast with presentation. And if any of you have questions, I have here some helping questions just to give you some thoughts of what are you struggling with, if you have some things that you cannot figure out in your career. And then do you have any fears, for example, moving forward with your career? One of my fears, it was that I don't know enough, for example. And then I just had to accept that I don't know enough, and that's okay. So I don't know what about you? And that's it from my side.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Laura. I think there was
You're very
some
welcome.
talk in the comments about certificates and whether some courses are recognizable towards some certificates. Our UX design course, next one starts in September. You get a certificate at the end, and it's recognizable internationally. There are also free events like this one into UX design. Yeah, I think we have a question. How you combine working full-time and taking UX UI design courses?
That's a good question, because it's really difficult. And I have to admit that this year, it was really difficult for me to take courses, because sometimes I worked overtime, even though it was not required. But at times, because you're passionate about the field, you start taking courses, full-time work. But I think you have to make time for it. And ideally, with the company, is to ask, for example, every Friday, ask your manager to give you 2 hours where you can study yourself. This is what I've noticed that in companies is this practice. So I would recommend this, because then you interfere too much with your personal life, and then it's imbalanced, and it's not something that you really want. Then you are overwhelmed and stressed, and I'm not sure how much you'll focus at work, but otherwise you just manage your time. You set aside time and be very productive. Let's say you take on Mondays 2 hours for self-studying, and in those 2 hours you just study and not getting distracted by anything else. That's my best recommendation for courses.
Absolutely, that sounds great. I think we have 2 more questions. Kate says, I'm a web developer studying college. I have no experience, but my marks are good. I'm thinking of emailing web dev companies and ask if they have any opportunities for me for work or internships. Should I do it?
Yes, please. It's a big yes. And if one or two companies that don't answer, then go with the next ones. From my experience, I got a lot of no's. As I mentioned, it's difficult sometimes to get internships, but some companies really appreciate that you want to work for free for them, because they're also learning from you. So don't get discouraged by this.
Any advice towards what should they start with when reaching out to companies?
Talking about your passion and what you are good at, what you can offer them, that's also important. And then what you like to learn. Because it needs to be, in a way, an exchange. Maybe you are very good in socializing, for example, or as you mentioned, with web design. So I think that's a good exchange.
All right. Is there any particular maybe database besides LinkedIn and any platforms that would help people look for prospective companies, prospective employers?
Just go directly on the company's website, and then you can find names there and or HR mail, and then you can reach out to them in that way. I would say LinkedIn, I don't know in other countries, but LinkedIn in Denmark is very popular. So most of the connections, I made it through LinkedIn. Otherwise, also through a company's website. And as I mentioned, go to network, different events within UX design or whatever field you are in, and just connect with the people there. And you must get some tips on how to reach some companies.
Okay, amazing. There's another question from Amanda. I'm currently studying on a coding bootcamp, and we have covered some UX, UI as well. I want to head into this once I'm finished. Are there any resources you recommend I take a look at to broaden my knowledge?
Yeah, as I mentioned in the slide I showed, it's the Interaction Design Foundation. I would say it's a very good source to get continuing with it, because they have courses on different categories, subjects. Design thinking, for example, it's a course that is very important within UX design. It's a way to think within design, and also for business, for example. That would be a very good start, I would say.
Sounds great. And the last question, were you using industry tools and workflows before becoming a professional? What tools did you use?
Good question. For UX design, there are so many. I think I explored many of them, and I worked a lot in all the Adobe suite, especially Adobe XD, where I could do workflows and final UI design, and also some research, some documentation, which is not really indicated, but I explored it. But now I'm working with Figma. Let me think. Figma, and that's because it's very easy to do workflows, user journey, final UI design as well, prototypes, interaction design, but also Miro. It's a very good ideation tool or workshop tool. I would definitely recommend Miro. If I got your question right.
Yes, absolutely.
About the tools.
We have so many more questions. From Lily. How did you prep for interviews? Did you make a PowerPoint presentation to present? What's a good amount of pages to have in a presentation?
It's also depending on what are the requirements, because sometimes they don't require to make a presentation. But I think I was very much, I was knowing what I want from the job, and also what are my skills. I emphasized my skills and my motivation for the job. And also what were the results, because this is also very important. And maybe you are at the beginning and then you don't have some tangible results, but you can mention about some courses that you took and what you've learned about and how you applied in different projects, I don't know, freelancing projects or your projects that you did yourself. And you can show or talk about this and how you approach the situation, because another thing that's important, it's also your mindset. How do you think about that specific concept or project? What are your thinking steps? That's also very important to explain in an interview. And if they ask you for a presentation, maybe, let's say 10 pages would be more than enough to describe what you've done and how. Could be
Yeah,
even less,
that
could be
sounds about
5.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe would you maybe depending on an organization, but to me it sounds like the more concise, the better. Usually, thank you very
Yeah.
much. We also have Carolina. What do you think about the Google UI UX course by Coursera? Do you have any
Hmm.
opinion on that?
I actually heard many things about Coursera, and I've heard good things. I
Hmm.
didn't take it, but I think I would recommend it as well, because from my friends I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
you particularly didn't
And
have any.
no,
Um,
but what I've seen, I've checked some courses and how it was structured. I think I would recommend it because it was a very nice plan of course. Yeah, that you would take. So
all right. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Carolina. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, yes, we have Ameline. Thank you very much. I just finished a web dev program and we were taught to prep for technical interviews with code challenges. Is there anything like that for UI UX interviews?
it can be, yeah, not on the coding side, even though sometimes they require you to have coding skills, but I didn't encounter that this much. But yes, there are technical questions, maybe more how to, or I don't know if you can name it technical questions, but how did you use Miro in a workshop or Figma? Sometimes I've been asked, but it's very much depending on what was the position, because if it's strictly UX design, it's more about the how you think and less about technical questions.
Okay. Okay. Have you ever came across an interview which sent you a task in Figma, for example? Is that common?
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
say half half. There are
Okay.
companies that yes asking this. And
Hmm.
then but to be honest, they don't really go deep into how you use Figma and don't ask you to show how you whatever that button does.
Hmm.
It's more, yeah,
Is it more about like the final product?
exactly, yeah, and
Oh,
how you got to that conclusion, that solution.
okay.
It's actually about this, to be. And now that I'm working in this field, I nobody is asking you how you use Figma or Miro or whatever. It just they are interested. You can use PowerPoint presentation. They're interested in the end result and how you thought, how you got to the end result.
Hmm. Yeah. So people should fully expect technical challenges before the interviews, but don't stress about their technique, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you, Emmeline, for your question. Anybody else? As you I think answered the first question, I thought about maybe all the people here, if uh, you would like to connect with each other, I will be sending out an after event email, and then maybe I'll figure out a way to help us all connect, maybe through LinkedIn, so that you know, raise our all of our connections and maybe utilize LinkedIn, like you said, to the fullest potential. I think it's quite popular. I'm in the UK. I think LinkedIn is also the main thing for networking and hiring. Um, yeah, thank you, Emmeline. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm very sorry. Uh, all right. Yeah, so look out for an email, and I'll figure out how to make like a little group on LinkedIn, maybe. That would be great, I think. With Laura, of course, and all of our other speakers. We have one more event coming next week, and you are all invited and probably going to be notified. So look out for that. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much. All right. Anybody has any other questions?
And if not, please feel free to write whatever question you have, and we'll do the best to answer.
Okay, give them a minute. Um,
And again, I think it's great to have this type of events with women in tech. And that's because what I experienced, it's a little bit of fear from jumping from different fields into tech. So if you have a different background, I can see here we have developers as well, coders, but I still see the fear into jumping to tech because of the culture probably, or education, or this mindset of women, they should not, or maybe they are not suitable for a tech field, but this is not relevant. So
Yeah, I think jumping from a field to field in tech seems to be very common. Last week we had a presenter who jumped from data science to programming, from like a senior position to senior position. Next week we have Cornelia, who's a data scientist, also from Copenhagen. So everybody's invited if they are into data science, or I don't know yet, but I'm sure her path changed 5 times as well. Which is kind of inspiring, is that it's just, you never know how you're going to end up, what skills are going to stick. And I think that's quite nice. All right. Looks like nobody else has any questions. Like I said, look out for an email from me. And thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Thank you so much, Laura, for your insight and for answering all the questions and for sharing your story. Thank you so much, everybody. And see you next week, same time, different hosts. Thank you so much, Laura.
Well.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.